They fired the black CEO. Weeks later, she returned and bought the entire company. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. The boardroom was supposed to be silent. Instead, it burned with humiliation. A man in his 60s silver hair, perfect navy suit, slammed his hand on the table. "You're fired!" His voice cracked like thunder against glass walls, echoing across the city skyline behind him. Every phone in the room lifted. Someone whispered, "Is he really doing this?" He was, and enjoying it. Across the table, she didn't move. No flinch. No fear. Just a woman in a fitted black blazer posture, straight eyes locked on him, steady as marble. Her name was Amara Lewis, head of operations. Black, brilliant, and very aware of what was happening. The man leaned forward, jabbing his finger toward her chest. "I told you we don't tolerate incompetence here. Pack your things," he smiled, expecting applause. Instead, he got silence, the kind that stings. Cameras clicked. Security lingered at the door. The room pulsed with power and prejudice. Amara finally blinked once. Then she spoke softly, almost too calm. "Are you done?" Gasps rippled. The man's grin faltered just a second. Her voice carried something unusual, not anger, not weakness. Just clarity, the kind that unnerves men like him. The blinds behind her rattled as the wind shifted. Outside, sunlight slid between skyscrapers, casting a sharp line of gold across her face, half in shadow, half in light. It felt symbolic. No one in that room noticed. But the camera phones caught everything. She folded her arms, watching him struggle to control the narrative he thought he owned. He didn't know that in 12 minutes, the entire building would learn who really ran this company. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Amara Lewis. She took one slow breath, eyes steady. "I suggest," she said, voice measured, "you sit down before you embarrass yourself further." No one laughed. The man's face turned red. The city outside glimmered behind her, cold steel and sunlight, waiting for what came next. Hours earlier, the building hummed with something quiet, not work, not progress. Gossip. Whispers floated through the glass hallways like smoke. "She's getting replaced. Finally. They need someone who fits the company's image." Amara heard it all, not from eavesdropping, from the way conversations stopped when she walked by. The silence told her everything. She walked through the office with her coffee in hand, steady poised. A few heads turned. Some smirked. One assistant even whispered too loudly, "She's only here because they needed diversity points." Amara smiled, a small, knowing curve that scared them more than anger ever could. She didn't defend herself. She didn't need to. At her desk, the reflection on her laptop showed the skyline, tall, indifferent, cold. She watched her own face in that reflection, her expression calm, analytical. They saw a manager trying to keep her job. They didn't see a founder studying her own empire. Her inbox buzzed. Another urgent email she wasn't CC'd on. Another meeting accidentally moved without notice. She'd stopped counting. Instead, she opened a different folder, one labeled Equity Board Access. Inside were files, contracts, and documents with her signature on the dotted line. She looked at them once, then closed the folder. She didn't need to remind herself of who she was. Her phone rang, a familiar voice on the other end, calm and respectful. "Madam Lewis, the board confirmed your attendance for tomorrow's session. Would you like us to prepare the executive minutes?" She spoke softly. "No. I'll handle it personally." When the call ended, she stared out the window at the reflection of the city again. Somewhere below, people rushed, certain they knew how the world worked, who was in charge, who wasn't. She remembered a quote her grandmother used to say, "They can't see your crown when their eyes are trained to look down." That line stayed with her, always. Back in the hallway, Richard Cole strutted past her door, the man who would soon try to humiliate her. He didn't even greet her, just smirked. "You should enjoy today," he said, "before the company gets serious again." She met his eyes for half a second, and smiled. No one knew that the woman they whispered about was holding the key to every promotion, every department budget, and the very seat Richard thought he'd earned. Amara took one slow sip of coffee, leaned back, and whispered under her breath, "Let them talk. Tomorrow they'll listen." The city lights blinked back through the glass like the calm before a storm. Morning sunlight flooded the 42nd floor, bright, polished, deceptive. The kind of light that made everything look cleaner than it really was. Richard Cole walked into the boardroom like he owned the air itself. He didn't even sit, he commanded the space. Cufflink's gleaming voice already louder than necessary. "All right, let's make this quick," he said, slapping a folder down. "We need to address leadership inefficiency in operations." He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. Every pair of eyes drifted to Amara Lewis. She was already there, seated at the far end of the table, notebook closed, hands folded neatly. The picture of composure. She didn't bother to correct his assumptions. Not yet. Richard clicked his remote, and a slideshow appeared on the screen charts, missed targets, deadlines circled in red, all selective, all manipulated. He spoke fast, weaving the illusion of incompetence with a salesman's ease. "As you can see," he said, "these numbers reflect a pattern, one that needs to be corrected permanently." A nervous cough came from someone down the table. Another executive leaned in and whispered, "Is she even allowed to be here for this?" Amara heard it. She turned, gave a polite nod, and smiled just enough to unsettle him. When Richard finished, he clicked the remote again, the projector light fading. He placed his palms on the table. "I'm recommending immediate termination of Amara Lewis as head of operations," he declared. "Effective today." The words hung heavy. A few people looked down. Others nodded, relieved it wasn't them. It was a performance one Amara had seen 100 times before in different rooms with different names. She wasn't angry. She was taking notes. She rose, slowly gathering her papers. "Before you finalize that decision," she said, her voice low but clear, "you might want to double-check your assumptions." Richard smirked, misreading her calm for fear. "Oh, no need," he said. "We've done our homework." Amara tilted her head. "Homework, or selective reading." A ripple of tension spread across the room. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Richard stepped closer, towering. "This isn't personal, Amara. It's business." She looked up at him, eyes steady. "You're right," she said. "And business has a funny way of revealing who actually understands it." For a brief second, something flickered behind his arrogance, uncertainty maybe. He laughed it off. "Cute. Let's wrap this up." Amara leaned forward, sliding a small black access card across the table toward him. "Go ahead," she said softly. "Try logging in with that. Let's see how far your authority really goes." He frowned, confused. The board members watched in silence. Amara turned away, gathered her notebook, and whispered, "Showtime." Outside, the glass wall clouds began to gather. The storm was coming, and she was ready to let it break. The silence after her last word was almost theatrical. Richard stood frozen, the access card glinting between his fingers. The logo on it matched his own company badge, except one small difference. Hers had gold trim. His didn't. He forced a laugh, shaking his head. "Cute trick, Amara. I don't play games in this room." She didn't blink. "You just did." The others around the table shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged quick, nervous glances. They weren't sure what they had just witnessed. Defiance or dominance. And then, almost as if the building itself joined the moment the automatic blinds began to lower, dimming the sunlight. The glass walls reflected everyone's face at once. Guilt, fear, confusion. Amara sat back down, calm and deliberate. "You wanted transparency," she said. "Now you have it." Richard's jaw tightened. He turned toward the projection screen. "Security," he barked. "Pull up her records. Employment start date, chain of command, contract." The door opened before he finished. A young IT specialist stepped in carrying a slim tablet. "Sir, you might want to see this," he said, voice trembling. Richard snatched the device. His smirk returned briefly. Then it vanished. On the screen was Amara's digital signature on every executive report, every major acquisition, every board decision of the past year. His name didn't appear once. The air in the room thinned. Someone whispered, "She's higher clearance than you." Amara didn't move. She only looked at the reflection of Richard's face in the dark glass. "Still think it's a trick?" He turned to her, trying to find footing. You're not even part of corporate. Your operations, for God's sake." She stood again, slow and steady. "You really should read what's under the title before you try to erase it." Her tone wasn't loud, but every syllable landed like a gavel. Behind her, the blinds finished closing. The room was now lit only by the dim glow of the projector, a courtroom of shadows. Richard tried to recover. "Let's not make this dramatic. I'm doing what's best for the company." Amara stepped closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Exactly. That's why you won't be doing it much longer." A low murmur rippled around the table. One of the senior board members, a woman with silver glasses, finally spoke. "Mr. Cole, Maybe we should pause before proceeding. Her tone was cautious, respectful, directed at Amara, not him. Richard looked around and realized the shift, the invisible tide that had turned without warning. The authority in the room had moved. Amara turned to the board, composed as ever. If we're done pretending, she said, let's proceed to the real agenda. Then she gestured toward the door. And someone get HR on standby. No one moved for several seconds. Then they did quickly. Outside, thunder rolled against the glass. Inside, the storm had already started. The thunder outside felt synchronized with the silence inside. Richard stood stiff jaw, locked the card still pinched between his fingers. He couldn't look at anyone, not even at her. Amara broke the stillness first, not with a shout, not even with motion. Just a voice so calm it cut sharper than any anger could. Before we continue, she said, let's clear one thing. I don't take orders from you, Mr. Cole. You just report to me. Gasps fluttered across the table like birds startled from a wire. Someone dropped a pen. The clatter was loud in the heavy air. Amara's eyes never left him. He finally barked out a laugh, hollow and shaky. You don't have that kind of clearance. Check the chain of command, she replied. It's public record. He turned to one of the assistants. Pull it up. The young man hesitated, then started typing, hands trembling. The screen mirrored his face, pale and sweating. Moments later, the company's intranet hierarchy loaded on the wall display. At the top, under Executive Committee, Louis Amara, Chief Executive Officer, Interim. The room went dead quiet. Even the rain stopped tapping against the glass as if waiting. Amara looked at the projection, then back at him. I warned you earlier. You didn't listen. Richard's lips parted, but no words came. She stepped forward, slow, deliberate, each click of her heels echoing like punctuation. You humiliated me in front of this team, she said, her tone measured. You made assumptions. You let arrogance write your script. She paused right in front of him, and now it's time to edit. A few people looked down. No one breathed. Richard finally stammered, You never corrected anyone you let people believe. Amara tilted her head. Would they have believed me? That question hit harder than anything else that morning. She took a breath and turned toward the board members. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll reconvene this meeting in 15 minutes. But first, I'd like to speak privately with Mr. Cole. Everyone stood at once, relief mixing with awe. They filed out quietly, avoiding eye contact with either of them. When the door closed, the two stood alone in the half-lit boardroom. Amara crossed her arms. I could have fired you in front of them, she said. But humiliation doesn't teach. Accountability does. Richard swallowed hard. You're not going to press charges, she smiled faintly. You think this is about punishment? A long pause. It's about standards. I'm not lowering mine just because you lost yours. Outside, the lightning flashed a white line cutting across the skyline. Amara turned back to the table, gathering her notes. You'll get an email from HR within the hour, she said. And one more thing, Richard, he looked up. Next time you shout at a woman in a boardroom, she said softly, make sure she doesn't own the building. Then she walked out, leaving silence to finish what she started. The door to the boardroom opened again 15 minutes later, but this time every eye was already fixed on her. No one breathed as Amara Lewis walked back in her stride, steady, her composure untouched. Behind her, the HR director followed with a small folder clutched to his chest. Richard Cole trailed behind them, his confidence gone, face pale under the fluorescent light. The storm outside had broken open, soft rain streaked the glass walls, a rhythm of cleansing over steel. Amara reached the head of the table and placed her tablet down. Let's continue, she said simply. No grand announcement. No drama. Just order the kind that needed no permission. The projector flickered to life again, this time displaying a live connection from corporate headquarters. A woman's voice filled the room. Madam Lewis, the board of directors is online. Shall we begin? Every head snapped toward Amara. Even Richard froze mid-breath. She nodded calmly. Proceed. On screen, the board members appeared, executives from London, New York, and Johannesburg, faces crisp under perfect lighting. The chairwoman smiled faintly. Miss Lewis, we've reviewed your report and your handling of the Riverfront acquisition. Outstanding work. As acting CEO, your discretion in dealing with internal conflict has been noted and commended. The air thinned again. That title, acting CEO, wasn't just confirmation. It was revelation. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Another murmured, "She's the boss." Amara didn't turn toward them. She stayed focused on the screen, speaking with the poise of someone who'd held power long before anyone recognized it. "Thank you," she said. but the credit belongs to the team. Sometimes it takes a storm to show who can stand in the rain. Richard's reflection wavered in the glass behind her, a man trying to vanish from his own story. The HR director cleared his throat. Per Miss Lewis's instruction, Mr. Cole's termination paperwork has been processed. Effective immediately. The sound of paper sliding across the table was the only noise. Richard didn't speak. He simply stared at the folder, eyes darting between her and the signatures he didn't recognize. She looked at him one last time. "You thought this was your meeting," she said quietly. "It was your test." She turned toward the others. "We move forward today under one principle, dignity before ego. If you can't uphold it, you won't belong here." One by one, the executives nodded, some out of respect, some out of fear, but all understanding that something had shifted. The call ended. The projector light dimmed, leaving only the glow from the city below. Amara gathered her notes, her movements measured, deliberate. Outside, the rain slowed, the thunder rolled away. She glanced once at the window, seeing her own reflection layered over the skyline. The woman they doubted was gone. The CEO they never saw now unmistakable. The meeting ended, but the silence didn't. It lingered heavier than before, a mixture of guilt, awe, and disbelief. Executives rose from their seats slowly, as if afraid to disturb the air. The storm had passed, yet its echo stayed trapped inside the glass walls. Amara stood by the window, arms crossed, watching streaks of rain crawl down the city skyline. She could see their reflections behind her, the people who once doubted her, now standing still, waiting for some cue that it was safe to breathe again. She didn't turn around. "If anyone has something to say," she said quietly, "now would be the time." No one spoke. Richard Cole sat in the corner, hands clasped, face drained of color. His arrogance had melted into something small and human. Amara finally faced him. "I'll have HR escort you out when you're ready," she said. He nodded once, no fight left in his voice. "You didn't have to do it like this." She studied him for a beat. "I didn't," she said. "But you did." Across the table, Carla Evans, the company's counsel, adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "Miss Lewis, the board will expect a statement. The footage from this meeting is already circulating internally." Amara gave a faint smile. "Good. Let them see what accountability looks like." Maya, the youngest analyst in the room, raised her hand timidly. "Miss Lewis, if I may." Amara gestured for her to speak. "I just wanted to say when he shouted at you, I thought you'd lose it, but you didn't. You just stood there." Amara's gaze softened. "When people try to break your dignity, the only power you have left is how you stand." The room was quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was respect. Richard stood slowly, gathering his things. His watch caught the light once, a symbol of his authority now, just a piece of metal. "You won," he muttered. Amara shook her head. This wasn't a win. It was a correction. He hesitated, then whispered, "I'll never understand how you stayed that calm." Amara looked him in the eye. "Because I learned early the loudest voice rarely belongs to the strongest person." He left the room. The door closed softly behind him. Outside, the storm had cleared. Sunlight broke through the clouds, filling the boardroom with a new kind of light, warmer, golden, almost forgiving. Carla gathered the folders and leaned toward Amara. "You know this video's gonna go viral, right?" Amara exhaled slowly, watching the sun dance across the wet glass. "Let it. Maybe someone out there needs to see that you can lead without shouting." The younger employees exchanged glances, something between admiration and awakening. Amara turned back to the skyline. The reflection staring back wasn't the woman they whispered about that morning. It was the leader they'd just met. And she didn't need to say a word to prove it. By the next morning, the clip had already escaped the company walls. It spread quietly at first, a few employees forwarding it to friends, then to family. By noon, it was everywhere. The calm CEO, the woman who didn't flinch. The moment power changed rooms. Amara didn't read the comments. She never did. While the world reacted, she returned to work. Her office was still the same, glass walls, skyline view, the faint hum of ambition. But the energy was different now. The air carried a quiet respect that couldn't be faked. Carla Evans stepped in holding a tablet. HR completed the internal audit. "You were right, bias reports were being buried. Every single one." Amara nodded, unsurprised. "Then we fixed the system, not just the people." Carla arched an eyebrow. "You mean?" Amara smiled faintly. "A full rewrite of our culture policy. If we don't change the foundation, the walls will crack again." She turned toward the window, sunlight pouring over her shoulders. "This isn't about me winning," she said softly. "It's about making sure the next woman doesn't have to." Across the building, people worked quietly, cautious, humbled. The same employees who once avoided eye contact now greeted her in the hallways. Some whispered, "Thank you," as she passed. Others simply nodded. They didn't need to say more. That afternoon, Amara gathered her leadership team in the same boardroom where everything had broken. The blinds were open this time, the storm gone, the sky clear. She stood at the head of the table. Yesterday was a lesson she began. For all of us, titles don't define worth. Integrity does. So from today forward, there's a new rule: respect is non-negotiable. Carla projected a new draft of the company's internal code on the wall, the Dignity Protocol. Below it, every employee deserves to be treated with respect regardless of role, race, or rank. The room was quiet, not from fear, but from understanding. Amara looked around at each face. "We lost sight of what mattered," she said. "Now we rebuild." When the meeting ended, she lingered alone for a moment. Her eyes caught the faint reflection of herself in the window again, not the silent target from 2 days ago, but a woman reshaping an empire without raising her voice. Her assistant entered softly. "Miss Lewis, a reporter from the Financial Ledger, is waiting downstairs. They're asking for a quote." Amara smiled, gathering her notes. "Tell them I don't have one." The assistant hesitated. "You sure?" "Yes," Amara said. "They already heard it. Every time I refused to shout." She walked out, her heels echoing against marble, steady, precise. Outside, the city glowed with the afterlight of rain. Justice had made its point. Now came the work of turning it into policy. 2 weeks later, the headlines had cooled, but the effect had not. The board called it a turning point. Employees called it the day the room changed. Amara just called it necessary. She arrived early that morning, as always, black blazer coffee in hand, the city still waking beneath her. Her reflection followed her through the lobby glass like a ghost of the woman she used to be: patient, watchful, underestimated. The new Dignity Protocol banners hung along the corridor. HR was rolling out bias training. Leadership had rewritten its code of conduct. But culture wasn't built by posters, it was built by moments. And today she planned to create one. Carla Evans joined her in the boardroom, tablet in hand. "We've finished the implementation report. Morale's up, retention up, and the board just approved funding for your mentorship program." Amara nodded a small smile. "Good. Let's make it permanent." Carla hesitated. "You really think people can change that fast?" Amara looked out the window. "No, but they can learn, and learning starts when silence finally feels uncomfortable." At that moment, a soft knock came at the door. It opened halfway. Richard Cole stepped in. He was a different man, no tailored suit, no smirk. Just a gray shirt sleeves, rolled up humility written in every gesture. Amara didn't flinch. She gestured to the chair opposite hers. "You came." He nodded. "You asked me to." Carla glanced between them, then quietly excused herself. The door closed. For a long moment they said nothing. The air between them carried the weight of unfinished lessons. Finally, Richard spoke. "I watched the video," he said. "The part where you didn't say anything. It hit harder than anything I've ever yelled." Amara folded her hands. "Words are easy. Stillness costs more." He looked down, fingers twisting his watch strap. "I spent my whole career trying to sound powerful. Turns out real power doesn't need an audience." She didn't smile. "No, it doesn't. It just needs purpose." He exhaled the sound, almost a confession. "I'm sorry. Not just for that day, for every day I thought authority meant volume." Amara leaned back, eyes steady. "Apologies don't erase what happened, but they can build what comes next." He nodded. "Then let me help." Quietly this time. A flicker of something like forgiveness passed through her gaze, not soft, but earned. "Start with mentoring the ones you ignored," she said. "Teach them what not to become." Richard stood, eyes glassy, and extended his hand. Amara hesitated, then shook it. Firm, final. "Everyone deserves a second lesson," she said. He left without another word. Amara watched him disappear down the hallway, shoulders, heavy steps, slow, a man walking into his own correction. Outside, sunlight broke cleanly across the skyline. Some storms destroy. Hers had taught. By the end of that month, the entire company felt different. Not louder, just cleaner, calmer, sharper. Conversations that used to hide behind jokes now carried weight. The silence that once punished was now a space for listening. Amara moved through the halls like she always did, unhurried, focused. But this time, when people saw her, they didn't whisper. They greeted her by name. "Morning, Miss Lewis." "Good to see you, ma'am." Respect was no longer forced. It had grown roots. At noon, she entered the same boardroom where it all began. The walls were the same glass, silver trim, but the energy was different. On the wall screen glowed a new logo, Turner Holdings, Lewis Foundation, Leadership through dignity. Carla Evans was there flipping through contracts. "We've got full board approval," she said. "Your leadership fellowship launches next quarter. Scholarships for women of color, mentorships across all departments." Amara nodded. "Good. Let's make sure it's not just a headline." Carla smiled. "You know people are calling this the Lewis effect." Amara chuckled softly. "Names fade. Systems last." As the meeting began, the sound of rain returned, not thunderous this time, just gentle, rhythmic, the kind that makes cities feel alive. Downstairs, the new hires gathered in a training session titled Dignity Protocol 101. Maya, the young analyst who once watched everything unfold, was now leading the orientation. She stood before a room full of fresh faces, her voice steady. "When someone underestimates you," she said, "don't rush to prove them wrong. Just keep building until their silence sounds like respect." Upstairs, Amara listened through the glass vent above, catching that one line. It made her smile, not wide but real. The lesson had traveled further than she ever expected. Later that day, a reporter stopped her in the lobby. "Miss Lewis," he called just one question. "What do you think people learned from what happened here?" She paused, turning to face him. Cameras blinked. The world was waiting for a quote. "Maybe," she said after a moment, "they learned that calm isn't weakness, it's control. And control is how justice breathes." Then she walked past them, the sound of her heels echoing against marble, measured, powerful, assured. That evening, the office lights dimmed one by one, reflecting off the glass towers around them. Amara stood by the window city, glowing beneath her phone, silent beside a stack of plans. She had turned a storm into structure pain, into policy noise, into reform. The woman they once tried to silence had become the standard. Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, dignity stayed. 6 months later, Turner Holdings was almost unrecognizable. Not because of the logo or the lobby art, those were the same, but because of the way people moved. There was less posturing, more purpose. Conversations felt real. Meetings started on time and ended with listening, not shouting. Amara Lewis walked through the new floor of the Diversity and Leadership Initiative, her initiative. The walls were lined with framed photos of mentorship sessions, community grants, startup founders who had once been interns here. The air smelled of fresh paint and change. Maya met her at the elevator holding a tablet. "Final numbers from the fellowship," she said, smiling. 70 applicants accepted, half promoted within their first quarter. Amara smiled. "Good. Growth means it's working." "And the press?" Maya asked. "They'll write what they want," Amara said. "But the real story's here." She gestured toward the open office full of young professionals, diverse, energized, confident. Every face in that room is proof that silence, when used right, is louder than chaos. A small crowd gathered near the conference hall, the unveiling of a new plaque. Carla Evans stood at the podium. "Today," she announced, "we dedicate this space to the woman who changed how we define leadership, the Amara Lewis Center for Ethical Management." Applause filled the room. It wasn't forced, it was earned. Amara stepped forward, reluctantly humbled. "I didn't build this alone," she said. "We built it. Every person who chose principle over pride is part of this." She paused. Scanning the crowd, she saw Richard Cole near the back, standing quietly, head slightly bowed. Their eyes met. He nodded once. She returned it, no bitterness, just acknowledgement. The cycle had closed. After the ceremony, Amara lingered in the quiet hallway. Carla joined her. "Funny," she said. 6 months ago, that same hallway was filled with whispers. Amara looked at the glass wall ahead, her reflection clearer than ever. Whispers are just lessons waiting to find their voice. They walked together toward the exit, past rows of new employees laughing softly over coffee, past the hum of a company that had learned how to breathe differently. Outside, the city pulsed with evening light. Amara stopped for a moment on the steps, looking out over the skyline. "We didn't just change policy," she said. "We changed posture." Carla smiled. "What's next?" Amara exhaled, her tone almost a whisper. "The next storm. There's always one coming." A breeze lifted her hair as she turned toward the street headlights, flickering in reflection across her face, calm, sure, and ready. Some leaders chase applause, others leave instructions. And Amara Lewis had left both carved not into marble but into memory. Morning light spilled across the city like a quiet blessing. The air was crisp, carrying that unmistakable hum of new beginnings. The Turner Holdings tower, glass, steel, and symmetry shimmered like it had been washed clean. Amara Lewis stood in the lobby, speaking with a young intern, a nervous girl with notebook in hand, eyes wide. "I read about you," the girl said softly. "About what happened here?" How did you stay calm when everyone turned against you? Amara smiled, the kind of smile that comes from knowing storms don't scare you anymore. Because anger would have proved them right, she said. But calm reminded them who was really in control. The elevator doors opened and people stepped aside instinctively. Not out of fear, out of respect. She didn't rush. She never did. Her presence filled the space without volume like music you feel before you hear. As she reached the front doors, Maya appeared beside her. Big day, she said, holding a folder marked Global Expansion. Your speech for the UN Leadership Summit is confirmed. They want you to close the conference. Amara raised an eyebrow. And what do they want me to talk about? Maya smiled. Whatever made a boardroom full of doubters fall silent. They both laughed quietly. Then Amara adjusted her hat, the same wide-brimmed one she'd worn that first day when she walked in underestimated. The same one that had watched her turn humiliation into history. She pushed the glass door open. Sunlight poured in golden and soft, wrapping her in warmth. Outside, the city moved with rhythm, cars, footsteps, possibility. A small boy waiting at the crosswalk looked up at her, his eyes bright. He couldn't have been more than 10. He whispered almost to himself, "That's her." Amara glanced down, smiling gently. "Morning, young man." He grinned. "Are you the lady from the video?" She nodded once. "Maybe." "What did you say to make them all stop talking?" Amara thought for a second, then crouched slightly to meet his eyes. "Sometimes you don't need to say anything. You just stand tall." The boy nodded as if storing it away for later. She straightened, gave a slight nod, and stepped into the sunlight. Behind her, the glass doors reflected her silhouette, not the woman they doubted, but the legacy she'd become. No flashing lights, no music cue, just her footsteps firm, even certain. The wind caught her coat as she crossed the plaza, and as the sun reached its highest point, it framed her like a portrait, one final image of grace and authority combined. Because in the end, she hadn't shouted to earn her respect. She'd simply walked through the fire and refused to burn. That was her legacy. That was the walk of dignity.